Hello there, this is David and welcome to the Top 10 Strangest RPGs 1998 to 1999 edition. Did you miss the previous Strangest RPGs videos? Check out the links in the video description below to view them now. In the previous 2 years, the PlayStation hit the scene with a vengeance, decimating Nintendo and opening the floodgates to odd RPGs that previously would have only seen the light of day in Japan. After the smashing success of Final Fantasy VII, fans wanted more RPGs and Sony obliged, localizing just about everything that they could. This would go on for quite some time and usher in what many people, myself included, consider to be the golden era of RPGs. Remember here that I'm not ranking them on their strangeness, I'm simply going to be going in release order. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 10. Guardians Crusade, released for the PlayStation in September of 1998. Known as Knight and Baby in Japan, Guardians Crusade follows the adventures of, well, a knight and a baby. You take on the role of the knight whose job it is to deliver the baby to its mother at the top of God's Tower. Looking at the game, you may think that it's kiddie or easy or extremely short, but you'll be wrong on all accounts. The world is expansive and the system is complex, as the baby not only acts as a party member, but also as a pet who can transform into monsters and use their attacks, similar to a blue mage. However, this is only when he's happy, which brings in the other Tamagotchi-esque aspect of the game. If you don't treat baby right, he'll get pretty upset and won't follow your directions. Also, there's a collection aspect, namely 70 living toys that you can find which work the same way as summons or magic do in other RPGs. However, instead of learning them when you level up, you only gain access to them if you find them, encouraging you to explore every nook and cranny of the world. Number 9. Jake Coon, released for the PlayStation in December of 1998. This is probably the earliest example of Studio Ghibli contributing to a video game, and it shows. It's no Ni no Kuni, but it is gorgeous nonetheless, not only in graphics, but in the enchanting soundtrack as well. You take on the role of a cocoon master who goes out to explore the mysteries of pre-rendered forests and ruins. As this game came out only a scant few years after the tremendous success of Pokemon, monster capturing aspects are present as well, with your poor wife suffering in silence every time she fuses a monster for you. However, the real meat of the game happens around the midway point where the shit hits the fan. You'll just have to play it yourself to see what all the fuss is about, which won't take you long, only about 15 hours or so. Number 8. Shadow Madness, released for the PlayStation in April of 1999. No one ever said that this was a list of good games, just strange games. That being said, this is an odd bird. Created and designed by a localization team, including Ted Woolsey of Squaresoft fame, rather than a game design team, and they used Final Fantasy VII as their template. The world is filled to the brim with lore. There's books to read on every subject imaginable, with additional glyphs to find on the map, with more lore and exposition. It's obvious where the developers spent their time, because it definitely wasn't the battles, the gameplay, or the difficulty. I mean, despite lasting roughly 25 hours, the maximum level cap is only 15, which will easily reach well before the halfway point. So it is nice that the developers thought to let you skip random encounters. The world map is literally that, a map that you walk on top of, and when you travel back and forth between worlds, you have to play a first-person submarine shooter game. Don't get me wrong, even though this was hailed as the next Final Fantasy killer upon release, it is one of the worst RPGs ever made. However, if you go into it with a mindset that it's more of a graphic novel, you might actually have some fun with it. Number 7. Survival Kids, released in June of 1999 for the Game Boy Color. I spoke about this game before my top 10 Game Boy RPGs, so this game is both strange and good. If you've heard of the Lost in the Blue series released on the DS, you know what this game is about. As the name implies, the gameplay revolves around survival, with many ways to proceed and no one clear path. It's almost like a choose-your-own-adventure book, so it's really not traditional at all. Basically, you set about your daily tasks in order to escape the island while also keeping your hunger, thirst, fatigue, and life meters in check. That way you can't accomplish everything in one day, you'll have to pick and choose, so it will take quite a bit of time to get off the island, just as it would in real life. There's also a rudimentary item creation system where you rummage the island for objects that you can later fashion into tools, such as axes or bows. The endings are unrestrained, just like the game, Each ending will change depending on what items you discovered, how long you stayed on the island, what you accomplished, and how you escaped. Number 6. Hybrid Heaven released in August of 1999 for the N64. I remember the hype surrounding this one, especially the rumors swirling that this was going to be Nintendo's answer to Metal Gear Solid. But then it turned into an RPG on the Nintendo 64. Enough said. The title here is a play on words not just because the player controls a hybrid humanist alien, but also because the gameplay is a hybrid between traditional action games and turn-based RPGs. Basically, you move about the underground corridors, running, jumping, crawling, climbing, shooting, and solving puzzles until you get into a battle. The battles are somewhat similar to Parasite Eve, where you can still move around and dodge, but every few seconds your turn pops up, all the action stops, and you choose your command just like in a regular RPG. Then you go back to dodging and running around. The combat system also revolves around martial arts, hybridizing the Legend of Legaia and Saga series, where your muscles will grow and you'll learn new moves in combat depending on if you punch, kick, throw, or body slam your opponents to the ground. Number 5. Mario Golf, released for the Game Boy Color in August of 1999. There's actually 2 versions of this game, one for the N64, which is more of a traditional golf game, and this one, developed by Camelot of Shining Force fame, and it has many RPG elements such as experience points, exploration, and a leveling system all throughout. In one-player mode, you vie to be the best golfer possible and are let loose in the clubhouse to practice and hone your skills in the putting and driving ranges. Once you feel ready, you enter the club tournament, and after winning all those and becoming the best golfer in the land, there's even more to do. You can go back to each golf course and challenge their champions, and if you win, they'll become a playable character that you can use to defeat other champions. It's actually a sports game worth playing and a huge risk by Nintendo, but it paid off so well that Camelot now has a corner on the golf RPG hybrid genre that they pretty much single-handedly created. Leave it to a legendary RPG developer to not just make some cash-grab sports game, but turn it into something amazing. Number 4. Thousand to Arms, released for the PlayStation in October of 1999. This is actually the one game that inspired this entire Strangest RPGs series. It's about the strangest of the strange, while also being incredibly fun with plenty of voice acting and a kind of over-the-top 90s anime style. It's a traditional RPG meets dating sim, and it's those dates that oddly enough upgrade your weapons and spells, so it's not a complete waste of time to do them. To get the most out of the system, you have to string along every girl in your party, and the dates do play out differently depending on what options you choose, many of which are downright hysterical. This game doesn't take itself too seriously. It fully embraces its absurdity. The battle system is your standard turn-based system, however, it has a twist to it, where only your one frontline character can really attack, while the 2 in the back row are purely support. But the best part about it are the hand-drawn sprites, which look like really goofy 2D fighting games, and while the enemies don't really match the rest of the world, they're just so original, I love it. Number 3. Sayuki Journey West, released for the PlayStation in November of 1999. I remember when this came out in the States in 2001. I was working at Publix, and a fellow coworker told me about it because he knew that I did like Final Fantasy Tactics. I was pretty skeptical, but I looked up reviews and I loved the historical tie-in aspect, so I bought it, and boy am I glad that I did. A gem like this would have never been released by Nintendo, so thank God for Sony. This strategy RPG is based off the 16th century Chinese novel, Journey to the West, where Sanso, a Buddhist monk, travels from China to India, meeting mythological characters along the way such as Goku and Ashura. The religious themes of the plot are pretty heavy-handed, with Buddhism being heavily praised, while Hinduism, not so much. In fact, the Hindu gods serve as the main antagonists, while the party's goal is to rescue Buddha himself. Something like this never would have gotten past the censors at Nintendo. Number 2. Koudelka, released for the PlayStation in December of 1999. Koudelka is a horror RPG, probably the first horror RPG released in the West, and the precursor to the much more popular and even more strange Shadow Hearts series. But while Shadow Hearts plays much more traditionally, Koudelka is more like an action-adventure game, taking place entirely within the Nemeton Monastery in an alternate dimension where sorcery, vampires, and ghosts are the norm. The main character solves puzzles, utilizes tools, fights battles, and explores the murky depths in fully rendered 3D environment. Battles are random but take place on a grid similar to Trails in the Sky or Lunar, and your 3 party members fight off dismembered corpses, ghouls, and poltergeists fitting with the theme. Similar to Thousand Arms, the voice acting is actually really well done. To drive the survival horror aspect home, weapons will break so that you'll never get too powerful, and you'll always feel like you're at a disadvantage while unraveling the suspenseful plot. And number 1, Valkyrie Profile, released for the PlayStation in December of 1999. Have I ever told you how much I love Tri-Ace's flagship Star Ocean series? Well, that's not all they made. Enter the fantastic Norse-inspired Valkyrie Profile, a side-scrolling turn-based 2D gorgeous RPG. While Sayuki Journey West dabbled in some Eastern religions, Valkyrie Profile dives headfirst into the old Nordic traditions, specifically their obsession with death. As you play through the game, you will be exposed to vignettes giving the player a glimpse into how people of the world lived, and more importantly, died. Then, as Lenneth, a Valkyrie handpicked by Odin, it's your job to send those worthy souls into the afterlife. But in order to do so, you must go down to Asgard, or Earth, to find them, and then level them up so that they are actually prepared to do battle in the afterlife. The plot can be a bit esoteric and hard to follow, and if you're going for the best ending, be prepared to be glued to a guide the entire time. However, my suggestion is to just play the game and enjoy one of the best and strangest RPGs released on the PlayStation. Well, that's it for the countdown. What do you think are the strangest RPGs that you've ever played? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments, and have a good day.